All right, next question is focused on the afterlife. What you'll find often with religious people is that a lot of their religious actions and their actions in general, part of what will motivate them is a sense of reward in an afterlife. That's part of the motivation. And the question is, on the one hand, I can see how believing in an afterlife can give you a lot of solace, the sense that there will be ultimate justice, ultimate serenity. But on the other hand, having your actions motivated by an afterlife can sometimes mean that people can actually make their religious experience and their religious actions a bit self-centered in a sense, because it's all about getting the best possible position in afterlife. So my question is a life focused on building a great afterlife, is that a healthy way to live?
So it's a great question, a really interesting one. I'll say the punchline first and then we'll try and unpick it. I agree with you. I don't think it's a particularly healthy way to live. And it's of questionable spirituality. Because it turns out that the so-called religious and spiritual believer is simply living a life of pleasure maximization, but happens to think that pleasure is maximized by investing and building a great afterlife future rather than, but it's just a form of delayed gratification ultimately.
Yeah.
It's simply the same pursuit of material pleasure. And it's difficult to see in that any
And you think that's wrong?
Yes, I think it's difficult to see in that any meaningful spirituality. Now, I'm in good company in making that outrageous statement.
Okay.
We referenced the Mishnah before, so a great Mishnaic rabbi said this point explicitly. He said, don't be a person who serves God in order to receive reward, but be someone who serves not in order to receive reward. According to rabbinic tradition, actually, he was misunderstood to be denying the afterlife, which led to the founding of the breakaway sect, the Sadducees, who denied the existence of an afterlife. But that's a historical aside. But the core idea that the reason for doing that which is right, because it is right, is expressed there in the Mishnah, and perhaps most clearly spelled out by Maimonides, in which he says exactly the words I used. One should be oseh et ha'emet mipnei she'emet. We should do that which is real and right and truthful because it is real and right and truthful, because it contains intrinsic moral and spiritual value in and of in itself, and that alone should be enough of a motive for doing it.
Can you flesh that out? What does that really mean?
Yes. In other words, even were there not to be a world to come, even were there not to be an afterlife, we should do that which is right because it is right. And let me just try and explain a little bit about that. The first thing to point out is that the Torah itself doesn't really speak much about the afterlife. Yeah. We don't have any lengthy verses that describe in a Dante-like manner, Dante's Inferno, about the terrible tortures that take place in hell and the delights of the world to come. There's no verses about that in the Torah. It's almost not mentioned. Remarkably, actually, when the Torah does speak about reward and punishment, it speaks about material success. It says, if you do that which is right, then you will flourish economically, and nationally, and things will be good, there'll be peace in the land, there'll be plentiful produce, and things will go well. And that's not really reward and punishment. That's simply almost a system of investment. If, as a nation, we do that which is right, then inevitably, as Maimonides explains, society will flourish, produce will go well, we'll be able to live at peace and in harmony with ourselves, harmony with our neighbours. In other words, as Rambam explains, as Maimonides explains, this is telling us about the functioning of the world and how it operates. The Torah system, at its best, is a system that should create humans who are living virtuous and good lives, which will hopefully trickle down into a society which reflects values and therefore will flourish. A society which descends into materialism, a society which descends into decadence and self-centeredness, will be a society that in the long run cannot do well and cannot flourish. It will be a society that sows the seeds of its own destruction and won't be able to produce a healthy society built around the values that the Torah considers important to society.
And we've actually seen that happen
values of society and family and community.
Well, we've seen that happen to societies that aren't Jewish.
We've seen that happen to societies that aren't Jewish, but equally to societies that are Jewish.
Yeah, I'm saying
we are currently, let's make no bones about this, we are currently in a world that we see as a diaspora, as an exile. We're currently not in a society in which we're able to live our lives to the fullest. We face discrimination and hate and anti-Semitism often. In Rabbi Sachs's words, we are the canary in the coal mine. When a society is losing its sense of values, it turns to hate the other, and all too often the other is ourselves. And we are therefore very often the first symptom of a society that is losing itself and losing its values. And we ourselves have certainly not lived up to our values many areas in history and until this day. The Rambam, in a beautiful letter that he writes, speaks about the roots of the destruction of the temple, the Holy Temple itself, and the destruction of the Jewish state, the last Jewish state that existed, that was destroyed some 2,000 years ago. And he says it was a state that, anyone who knows the history of the time, there was civil war going on within the Jewish people themselves. They were fighting as much themselves as the enemy without. And all too often that takes place within our own communities and societies to this day. So we perhaps haven't always learned those lessons. But at least in theory, a society that has morals and values and puts those into practice will over time be a healthy, vibrant society that can flourish in a military way, flourish economically, and therefore be successful. So that's the material descriptions of what the Torah says takes place. Spiritually, in terms of the world to come, almost not a reference. And the Mishnah, in a radical statement, says as follows. It says, Schar mitzvah mitzvah. The true reward of a mitzvah is the mitzvah itself. Schar avera avera. The true consequence of a sin is the sin itself. In other words, if you are a person who respects one's elders, respects one's parents, is able to express appreciation and gratitude, then you will be a grateful person. It will mold you and form you into a certain sort of human being, a grateful person. If you're someone who keeps Shabbat, that means you have time in your week in which you step out of controlling and mastering the world, and you try and find that inner space that Shabbat offers to make the important connections with God, connections with community, connections with family, connections with ourselves, to reflect upon what sort of world we live in, to remind ourselves that we live in a world which is a gift, then you will be a different sort of person. You will be a Shabbat observer. You will be someone who has integrated Shabbat into one's own life and become someone who carries Shabbat within ourselves. And so on and so forth with every mitzvah. Every mitzvah is formative. It molds us into being a certain sort of person. And interestingly, this is something that's agreed upon by the Kabbalists, the philosophers, the Maimonideans. It's agreed upon by all Jewish thinkers. That mitzvahs are there to mold us and create and make us into certain sorts of people. And if we are that person, then we will be doing the truth because it's the truth. We will be doing that which is good and proper because it is good and proper. Look, we believe in morality. We believe in spirituality. We believe that there's a wrong way to live and a right way to live. We humans have limited access sometimes. That sometimes it can be murky and unclear as to how is best to live and how sometimes different humans can arrive at different judgments. We were speaking about before. There can be room for argument and debate. But in principle, we need to strive towards truth. We need to aim towards understanding how we are meant to be as people and how we're meant to live. And moral value carries within itself its own justification. I would say almost in the same way as it is logical to be logical. Logic doesn't need to look for an external justification. It justifies itself within its own internal system. It's logical to be logical. I would say equally it is moral to be moral. It is truthful to be truthful. It's a self-sustaining value. It's something that carries a content within itself. And therefore, ultimately, the reason you should do a mitzvah, the reason one should be a good person, the reason one should buy into a life in which one's trying to embrace values of spirituality, of ethics, of compassion and care, of truth and morality and sensitivity and empathy, because these are qualities and values that are worth possessing. And ultimately, all we're claiming when we talk about the world to come is that we exist in a state of embodied consciousness. We live in a world in which not always is the beauty and worth of morals obvious to us, but we will one day understand that worth, and with that worth will come an enormous sense of satisfaction. With that worth will come a indescribable bliss of knowing that one has done that which is right, and a sense of achievement and worth in having so done. So the pleasure that we talk about when we talk about the world to come is not a material pleasure at all. It's not an external pleasure. It's a sense of worth and appreciation of a job well done, of knowing that one has accomplished something that deserved to be accomplished, of knowing that one has left the world a little bit of a better place than the world that one came into, of knowing one's made a difference. And in our thinking, that's what we mean by eternal life. That's what we mean by achieving immortality. You know, we can often be seduced by fake immortality. We want to enter the record books. As the athlete stands there and knows they've achieved that gold medal, they've become one of the greats. They've become immortal. They've gone down in history as famous. But this is pseudo-fame. This is pseudo-reality. We as human beings have a sense, a very strong sense, that we're not just here for our 70, 80, 90, 100 years on planet Earth, that we can make a difference. And one act of love, one act of care, one act of compassion, one act of reaching beyond ourselves, flowing out of the limits of our own existence, and touching absolute value, that's a moment of eternity. That's a moment in which we humans have broken beyond the bounds of the physical time and space that we happen to exist in. We've ceased merely to be biomatter, and we've achieved something of absolute worth. And that moment can never be destroyed, because that's a moment of godliness, that's a moment of infinity, that's a moment of absolute value. One act of care contains within it real worth, real value, and that can never be lost. The universe can be 15 billion years longer. It can disappear and all have gone. But something real has occurred at that moment. I've done an act of immortality, done something that carries within it real moral content. And real moral content is something that's above time and space. It's an inherent truth, something that contains within it real spiritual value. And it's that we're holding out to people. We are saying, why live in a world of the temporary? Why live selfishly and self-centered? You're a human being. You have the dignity of existence. You are capable. The great gift God has given us is He said to us, I can make you into little gods. You are godlike. You can achieve something. God, all we really know about God is that He is God the Creator. He's God who has everything Himself, and in an act of altruism has given us the gift of existence. And that gift of existence He's saying to us is, I give you control. You're free-willed beings. You can make decisions. You can make the wrong decisions, but you can also make the right decisions. And that is the dignity of existence that God has given us. Make those right decisions, and you can achieve genuine worth, genuine meaning, and that is infinite, that is eternal.
Do you think, though, there is a place at all to be conscious of the fact that there will be that bliss of the afterlife, of knowing you've done the right thing? Is there any place for that?
Look, let me give you an example. When you have a little child who isn't doing well in school, so you need to motivate him. So you say to the child, get 10 out of 10 in your spelling test for the next 6 weeks and I'll get you a new scooter. So the child is doing their studies because they want the scooter. The parents are giving them that reward because they want them to know the spellings. A child gets a little older, a little bit more sophisticated. They're now a teenager. And the parents say to them, work hard on your exams because you want to get a good job. If you want to be able to succeed in life, you need to work hard on your exams. Hopefully, the parent is aware that even that is just a motivation. Even that is just what the child needs to hear. But the real reason to get an education is because you'll be an educated person. You'll be someone who understands the beauties and wonders of the world we live in. Someone who's able to access truth because it's true. Someone who's able to operate and function and be healthy within themselves and understand themselves, understand the world, and go on and achieve good things. So at each stage, of course, one needs to motivate by saying age and maturity appropriate incentives. And in a sense, that's the same with Torah. It's legitimate to say to a child, and sometimes even as adults, we can be a little bit childish, and say, do this because this will give you a reward. But in truth, that's not what it's really about. What it's really about is become educated because then you will be an educated person. Be kind because then you will be a kind person. Be empathetic and concerned and a giver because then you will be a giver. And being a giver is the greatest thing a person can be. All we know about God is that He's a giver. He's given us the gift of life, and we can be godlike. We can be givers. We can overflow, reach beyond ourselves, transcend our own existence, transcend the limits of physicality, ego, selfishness, self-centeredness, and be humans that genuinely are able to touch others, genuinely able to reach and care and be compassionate with others. And that is the greatest gift of life. Judaism is a consciousness-raising system. We're meant to walk through life and see everything that's been given, see everything that exists as a gift from God. We can walk through life and take that which we take for granted and say, how lucky I am, just look at this, and look what it took to get this to me. There's a glass that's manufactured, there's water that's flowing in the pipes, this is clean water. How many tens, hundreds, thousands of people have made this possible for me to have this? And this simple glass with water inside it is an enormous gift. If we think about the water boards and the cleansing of the water and the scientific discoveries that went into making it, and the building of the economy and the people that are cleaning our streets and laying the pipes and They're making glasses and importing them into the country. Before you know it, you're rapidly looking at the simple product here has been through hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people putting effort into it. And everything, we're meant to walk around life and we're meant to see everything as a gift that's granted to us. And if we could live life like that, we would be, first of all, infinitely happy. But we'd live a life in which we're able to be generous. We're able to see life as a gift and in turn want to share the gifts with others.
You can't be generous if you're not happy.
You can't be generous if you're not appreciative and recognise the gifts that are given to oneself. Each and every one of us are tempted to live in the smug illusion that our success is our own. And it's a nonsense. If we stop and pause for a few moments of thought, we'll realise the percentage of our own success that's due to our own efforts is minuscule, a fraction of a percent. What we've succeeded in doing is because of the gift our family has given us, our society, the education we've received, the infrastructure that's been laid for hundreds of years by people all around us, because we live in a safe and secure society in which there's police, in which there's street lighting, in which there's clean water and sewage and electricity that's provided for us. We are no better than that tragically sad figure of a Syrian refugee who's been bombed out of house and home through no fault of their own. We are that person. And if we can go through life and we can realise, break out of that smug, self-centred, self-patting ourselves on the back and thinking that our success is our own, and genuinely learn to recognise that life is a gift from others and a gift from the great other, God, then we would be a different sort of person. You know, we make quite a big fuss in Judaism about God. I want to ask a strange, we say, certainly in the past, we spoke about not being pagan, idol worshipping. Nowadays, in the modern era, we speak about atheism and so on. But why does the Torah care about that? Why does it really make a difference? Why would God want us to have a relationship with him and a connection with him? Why would he want us to know about it? If he wants us to do that which is right, does it matter if we think the world is pagan or non-godly? It's a strange question to ask, given that Judaism seems to take belief in God as so central.
Yeah.
But part of the answer to the question is that if you live in a pagan universe, if we look at what the pagans believed, and they saw a storm occurring as a battle between the thunder god and the god of the clouds and the god of the sun, and they saw the worship of gods as a way of giving them power. They saw humans as the playthings of the gods, the toys of the gods. Then that removes the dignity of being a human being. To believe in God is to believe in a world in which an altruistic, all-powerful giver has created us, and paradoxically, that's what gives us the dignity of existence, because we're not the plaything of a God. He doesn't need us. He has given us the gift of being able to make a difference. And similarly, in the modern form of paganism, if we live in an atheistic world, we live in a universe that's indifferent to us. We are simply biomass that exists for a period of time, and then our atoms are recycled and we enter back into the carbon system. The only possibility of humans having a dignity of existence is to live in a world in which we believe we have been given that gift of existence, that life is a gift, and that we've been given the dignity of existence, of really being able to make a difference. We are spiritual beings. We're beings of moral worth. We're beings that can touch truth. We can touch truth in science. It's a project that we're embarked on. We don't have the full truth, but we can reach ever closer towards it, and we can touch truth of morality and spirituality, and we can make a difference. We can make genuine choices. And to know that is to have the dignity of existence, and that is really the ultimate reward that's being held out in front of us. One can tempt a child with it and can say, wouldn't that be great if you'd have made a difference? And that's a good scooter to reward the child with. It's a good candy to give the child. One can tell the child, this is what will get you a good degree and a good job. And in the same way, we can point out that, of course, doing that which is meaningful. And we should train our children, we should train ourselves to learn to appreciate the taste of goodness, the taste of giving, how positive and enjoyable an experience it is to make a difference. But in truth, it's the making the difference that makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And if the child doesn't ever come to that understanding, then he's really not getting the point of it all, really.
It's a pity to go through life being childish.
Yeah.
It's better than the alternative. At least this person will be living a decent life. If someone is only telling the truth because they're scared of being caught and only working hard because they are eternally seeking the scooters of life.
Yeah. Better than not.
It's better than not. At least it will create a society in which people aren't hurting each other and, are doing acts of care. If you're only giving charity because you want your name up on the wall, that's okay.
Yeah.
It's human nature.
Yeah.
None of us are so righteous that we always do that which is right because it's right. And everyone has to work with the realities of human nature. And Judaism's ultimately a very practical system. It's okay with that. It's okay with people giving themselves their own incentives. And all growth comes through self-incentivizing and self-motivating and so on, and that's fine. But we should know that that's only a stepping stone. And do you think the real ultimate truth is to do things because they contain their own value?
And do you think we should always, ultimately, though, have those two components in our mind? and they can just be, the degree to which they're present in our mind can vary, but we should always have the reward versus it's the right thing. Both of them should always be present. Or do you think the aim is actually completely get rid of the reward focus?
I think realistically, I mean, everyone is different and everyone finds their own balance between the two. I guess most people need to find some sort of balance. All of us are on a life journey, and the definition of a journey means hopefully constantly growing. And what yesterday was being done just for an ulterior motive, today is being done because we've learned to appreciate it. But tomorrow's achievement is still there in front of us. I think one should check and reflect on one's motivation. If one's only doing something to get the reward, if one's only doing something because one just wants the prize at the end, then probably that won't result in a path to growth. If one is aware of both and saying, look, I need the incentive in order to give me the strength and energy to do that which is right and proper, then I think over time one will grow through the experience. Look, there are people who are engaged in acts of kindness the whole time. I mean, yet we don't find them becoming particularly kind people. Someone can work as a waiter in a restaurant and is spending all their time caring for visitors and guests and giving them food, and yet may not grow through that experience because they're simply doing it as a mundane job. Isn't that tragic? Because all they would need to do is stop and think and realise I'm making a difference to the world, realise I am performing acts of kindness and I can serve that food with a little smile, with a little bit of warmth, a little bit of extra care and attention, and suddenly that can imbue their day-to-day life with meaning. My car broke recently and I took it to the mechanic, and the mechanic told me that one can see he's someone who gives sterling service. He's a happy man. And he told me that many years ago he had he was a bit depressed, he didn't particularly enjoy his job, didn't feel it was particularly meaningful. And one day a client, a member of my community, I'm proud to say actually, invited him to their bar mitzvah of their child. And they sat him on the top table at the bar mitzvah.
Wow.
And in the speech they said that they were going through a stressful time and their car broke and it sent everything in upheaval. They needed their car for work and for business and for the rota and getting the kids to school and going shopping. And he delivered a great service and he looked after them and he helped them and that made a massive difference to their lives.
Amazing.
And he said, I sat there and I listened to that and it changed my life. This is what he said. He said, it changed my life. And I suddenly realised that when I'm fixing a car, I'm actually making a difference to people. There are people that are stressed, that they're elderly people who can't get around without their car, their parents are trying to help their families, they're people that need to get to work, and actually a car that's broken can make an enormous impact, can make an enormous difference. And I suddenly realised I'm making a difference to the world. And now every time I fix a car, I'm aware that I'm doing an act of kindness.
Wow. And
that's changed my life, he said. And that is exactly what we're talking about. Of course he's doing that job because he gets the money, he gets the payment, and he needs to live, and that's legitimate. But he's become aware that what he's doing is an act of kindness and making a difference to the world. And that is a story that's a story of a human being, Paul the mechanic, I'll share the phone number with listeners afterwards, who makes a difference to the world. There's a beautiful medrash that speaks about this point. There is a figure, a biblical figure, an early biblical figure, pre-Noah, pre the flood. His name is Enoch. And the Pasuk tells us something remarkable about him. It says, Vayishalech Chanoch im Elokim. Chanoch walked with God. And the Medrash is interested. What does this mean to say that he walked with God? And it says midrashically, whether it was a tradition or somehow derived from the verse, it says he was a shoemaker. And as he repaired shoes, he brought unity to the world. It uses almost a Kabbalistic phrase. He took a fragmented world and brought it back together, repaired it and brought it to a state of unity. And the great ethical thinker and Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, the founder of the Mussar and ethics movement, comments on this and he says, what great thoughts does a shoemaker have that brings unity to fragmented world? How does a shoemaker repair a spiritually broken world? It says by trying to make the best possible shoes for his customers. So if each and every one of us, in 2 practical exercises, if we could wake up in the morning and we can stop and think, wash our hands, brush our teeth, and then think how many thousands and tens of thousands of people have made it possible for me to just do those simple acts. Reflection number 1. Reflection number 2, to think about the job as we do. And think this job is meaningful. It makes a difference. I'm enhancing people's lives. I'm affecting them positively. I think that would be a different world. And that is the reward that we really hold out for people.
Totally.
That is the reward that we hold out for people.
Absolutely.
To stay up to date with JTV content, click subscribe here if you're on YouTube and hit the alarm bell. And if you're on Facebook, hit the like button and under following, click see first. If you enjoy watching JTV content and want to help us continue to grow, please consider making a donation to us by clicking here.